Hi, thank you very much for attending this afternoon. I'd just like to do a quick sound check. So could you please just look down at the box where your name is in attendees and just put a little tick in the bit with the hand up if you can hear me. We have got some other delegates who should be joining us. So I'll just do a sound check while I give a few moments to hopefully let them join us. Sometimes you can get delayed at the end of the day. So if you can hear me, if you can please just put a little tick in the box to say show me, or in the chat just respond and say that you can hear me, please. Thank you. Brilliant, that's great. Okay, as I say, we have got other attendees who should be joining us, but I'm not going to delay because I know it's the end of the day and I don't want to take up more of your time. It should only last about half an hour, the session. I'll give a bit more time at the end in case there's lots of questions and things from people. But I will go through the presentation now and you can ask questions through the question chat box if you want as we're going through it. Okay, so first of all, my details are all on this first screen here. You can see my email address and my telephone number. Please do feel free to ring me or to email me if you've got anything at all that you want to ask about. So the aims of the session today are to think about the impact of transition from primary through to secondary on students and look at different ways that we can try to minimise the impact of this. Then I'm going to have a look at the proposed programme, the content and its aims, and also explore findings from a survey that we did with primary school senior leadership teams about the transition. So I'm going to start off by having a look at the impact of the transition from primary through to secondary school. So the World Bank Development Report identified transition to secondary school as one of the 5 most important life stage transitions for young people. We know it's even more difficult at the moment for young people because of COVID-19. We're still not sure, will students be able to go into schools, into secondary schools, and have some of the kind of transition days that they do? Will it have to be virtual? All of those things are going to make it very, very stressful. Also, character development is a really important aspect of the curriculum for schools. Human flourishing is a widely accepted goal in life, and again, because of particularly with the current COVID-19 crisis, that's even more important than ever. Now, primary and secondary schools differ in the strategies that they use to help support students over transition, and feedback from the primary schools is that although the programs that the secondary school put together are very, very good, that primary school students need even more preparation and actually to have some time spent thinking about transition within the security of the familiar space of their primary school to help them would really smooth that transition. So that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at today, is what kind of things can be done within the primary school in order to help with the transition, and that could go hand in hand with that what then happens within the secondary schools. So we did a survey across all the different senior leaders and asked them about the different issues, things that they felt were key when looking at transition from primary through to secondary school. And we identified 5 areas that they thought were issues in relation to this transition. So one of those was identified as being emotional intelligence. Why is it so important for children to learn how to be more emotionally intelligent? So every human being experiences emotions. Some use these emotions and challenge them towards task accomplishment and goal achievement, whereas others are actually derailed from achieving their goals through emotions. And there was a really interesting article in TES by Jochen Menges, who's Assistant Professor of Organisational Behaviour at the University of Cambridge. And they've studied emotional intelligence extensively. And he said that it really helps children to deal with their environment adaptively so they can survive if they can have this emotional intelligence. Transition from primary through to secondary is a significant change for them. And actually, if we can look at that emotional intelligence and try to, first of all, get them to understand what emotional intelligence is, get them to improve their emotional intelligence, then they are going to have a much better chance once they arrive in secondary school to actually make that transition and to really cope with how things are. So learning to understand what kind of things are appropriate to speak about, what things might you not tell other people, what kind of things do you need to be sharing with other people, how do you engage with other people, how do you think about what is happening. So it really is one of the most important things, I think, for that transition through. The next issue that we identified was self-confidence. Probably no surprise to anyone there. We do also run a programme across secondary schools, the personal skills programme, and we've had quite a few students complete that. But I thought this was a really nice quote from a Year 7 student who'd completed the personal skills programme. If you always believe in yourself, then you know that there is something positive in you. That way you will thrive. So I thought, you know, it's really good to see that actually that student, by having looked at personal skills and developing their skills, really felt positive about themselves. And we certainly feel that the programme that we're producing here for primary schools that we're looking to pilot will also really help those students to believe in themselves and actually therefore thrive. There's a really nice quote here as well from Kriti Kohli, who's an educational blogger about confidence. Confidence level in students is an important factor in educational success. When a child loses self-esteem, they may lose motivation in learning. We're probably all aware of students where that's happened. By building confidence in students, we can safeguard the most important ingredient of success, which is motivation. Confidence is vital for his or her success, and the amount of confidence a student has will affect his or her educational goals. So by ensuring that a student has a really healthy self-esteem, the environment of learning becomes one where education and learning thrives. And I think that really is key. We know that if a student is lacking in confidence, they really struggle sometimes to actually keep trying within learning. If they have some confidence in themselves, they can take those knockbacks when they don't quite succeed. They can be much more open to asking questions, to actually trying something out, because very often that's one of the things that stops students. Their self-confidence stops them from even attempting something that they may well succeed at. So one of the real things that we want to look at within this programme is how different activities and skills that we can teach them to improve their self-confidence and also to help them become more independent. We know that many students who are at primary school are actually very confident within their primary school and they're quite happy there. They know what things are, how things work, they understand what's happening, they get on well with their teacher, they get on well with other students. But then they go to secondary school and suddenly that self-confidence is pulled from under their feet because they are in a new environment. There's lots of things that they don't know, and there's things that they don't understand in terms of the way things are structured. They have different groups of people who they're interacting with. So actually really getting the students to develop those self-confidence skills and making sure that they are something that's going to be transferable when they go into secondary school is really important to ensure that that student will succeed and actually do well once they get into secondary school. The next issue that we identified was across strengths and weaknesses. Again, there was a really nice article that was in the TES in 2019 about 3 ways to help students celebrate their strengths. There was the 2 positive psychologists, Martin Seligman and Christopher Peterson, who have extensively researched philosophical, religious and literary texts from around the world. And they've identified 24 universal character strengths, which include things like kindness, creativity, perspective, bravery, and a love of learning. And what they've found is that it's really important to acknowledge and develop character strengths. And Seligman has a book called Authentic Happiness, which in that book, he shows that we tend to actually be happiest when we use those character strengths in our work and play. So actually, if we can develop those character strengths and celebrate them, then we actually will be far, far happier, and we will succeed in both our work and play. So what we want to be able to do through the unit dealing with this is to start to get students to understand that they have strengths in certain areas and think about how they can then apply those strengths in other situations. So by them starting to understand that there are strengths that they have, it will enable them to feel much more positive about themselves and see that they have got strengths that will benefit them when they transition to high school. Very often, if you ask a student, what strengths have you got, they won't necessarily know what they are, or they might identify them, but they won't see how they can then have those strengths related to a different situation than they're currently in. And then the next section is about auditing skills. So the aim of a skills audit is for the students to identify the existing set of skills that they have, so that they can then see how these skills will help them transition through to secondary school. Often the students may have skills that, you know, are hidden because they don't actually identify and acknowledge the importance of those skills. So this unit is all about them starting to reflect back on what kind of skills they've developed whilst they've been in primary school, and not just within primary school, but actually what they've developed whilst they've been at home. They might have been helping with siblings, they might be in the guides or scouts or something like that. They might be in an outdoor team. They may be in some kind of club within the school or a club with outside the school. So it's getting to understand and to think about their wider picture of what kind of skills they have, and to audit those skills so that they have a really long list then of the different skills that they have, so they can feel really positive then about those skills. And then they can start to actually look at those skills and say, right, how are these skills going to be useful when I move into secondary school? And then on to the next one, which is all about practical issues. And I think these are actually quite small, but when they build up for many students, it can really have an impact on them and can really make a difference to how a student copes. I certainly have spoken to my sister, who's a year 6 teacher, and she's talked about students who've come back to school, and very often it's the little things that they've got very stressed about. So the fact that they didn't have the correct textbooks when they went into school and maybe got told off because they hadn't got the right kind of equipment with them, and it really gave them a knock. So it's thinking about all those little things that can be a worry for primary school students and getting them to think about them in advance, perhaps to try out things. So things like travelling to school independently, whether that be using public transport or walking. Think about what are the issues going to be in advance before they get there and do it, so they can start to think about what is it that you're worried about. Right, how can we overcome that? What kind of things can we do to help them to succeed in that? Organising books and materials for different lessons, making them understand that they will be with different teachers. They may even be with different students if they are setted. Again, it varies from secondary school to secondary school, but sometimes they will immediately, fairly quickly, go into sets for English and maths. Some don't set till later on, but just that idea of being in different groups, being with people perhaps who they don't know. Lots of students will be there with other students who they've never met before. So thinking about that, thinking about how they organise themselves, making sure they have got the right equipment with them for the right days, for the different lessons that they're going to. Being able to cope with moving around school for different lessons. So being able to navigate the school, learn where the different things are. Also, you know, if there is a 2-week timetable, which many schools have, being able to cope with that. So if you can, before they get to secondary school, give them some examples of some of these things and actually get them to try out some things so that they can feel positive. And then finally, things like organising homework and study timetables. So what we're proposing to do is to produce a secondary ready product which will provide schools with easy support, and the idea is that it's a ready-made solution to help with transition. It's going to focus on those 5 issues that I've discussed in the previous slides, and the format of materials will be determined by feedback from primary school teachers. In the autumn of 2020, we communicated with over 30 primary school leaders to have a survey to help identify what was needed for producing a pilot programme to help develop the skills that are needed to make sure that a student has a smooth transition to the next stage of their educational journey. And the next few slides I'm going to go through are going to look at some of the results of that survey. So this piece, sorry, I've jumped a slide there. This research piece examined primary school leaders' response to our proposal for a secondary ready programme aimed at Year 6 students. As I said, there were responses from over 30 senior leaders at primary schools across the country, and the research was to enable us to help us shape the content for the secondary ready programme. So now we'll go through a little bit about the responses that we received. So the first question was, how would you rate the importance of the following content to the programme? So then we've got all of those things that I've just looked at before, the 5 key things that were seen as being important. And across all of those options were predominantly rated either very important or important. But 2 stood out as being the most important content overall, and they were emotional intelligence and self-confidence. So those are the real key important factors that primary school teachers are telling us those students really need support with. We also asked about the delivery time. We're very conscious that it's quite difficult to fit extra things into a timetable. So we gave a number of options: 3 to 4 hours, 4 to 6, or 6 to 10 hours. Unsurprisingly, not many people were interested in 6 to 10 hours. The one that came out as the optimum time was the 4 to 6 hours, but we did have 35% saying 3 to 4 hours. What we've decided, because we have 5 key areas, is that we will do an hour on each of those areas. So we will come out with 5 hours of delivery time. So there will be 1 hour for each section. Then we also asked about what kind of support materials would be important for the programme. So we looked at, a student-facing PowerPoint for the sessions to use on a whiteboard, a printable guidance document for teachers, and then an online guidance document for teachers, a printable student booklet, and an online student booklet. The student-facing PowerPoint for each session stood out as the most important resource of all. And interestingly enough, it was seen as being more important to have an online teacher guidance document than to have a printable guidance document. But in the reverse, for the students, there was slightly more interest in a printable student booklet than an online student booklet, although it wasn't it was fairly close in terms of that. So that's the resources that was in terms of the value. So obviously the most important one that we're really focusing on is going to be that student-facing PowerPoint. The next thing that we asked was about when would be the best time to deliver this programme. We had thoughts about when it would be, and actually when we've done the survey, it's pretty much as we thought. We did suspect that after the SATs in the summer term would be the most appropriate time for this, and certainly 88% of people surveyed agreed that that was the best time. So obviously this first year through, in this upcoming summer term, there will be no SATs. So again, there's a bit more of a gap there. And then the next one was to have a look at the price range. We gave three different categories for the price range: 200 to 250, 250 to 300, and 300 to 350. Nobody thought that 300 to 350 was a plausible price range, and the bulk of people said 200 to 250 was the preferred price range. So that's what we are aiming to do when we do bring this out as a full programme. Then the next thing we asked was those people who were surveyed, we asked them whether or not they would be interested in the pilot, and 95% of those who'd participated in the survey said that they would actually be interested in participating in the pilot. So that's really good to hear. This next slide just summarises the findings of the research. So I've been through all of that there. It just takes you through step by step what those findings were. So on to next steps. What happens next? So the next step is to start to produce the first drafts of content and the actual format of the Secondary Ready programme, and to get some feedback from primary school leaders on those. We will then start to finalise the content and format it ready to pilot with primary schools, and we will need to identify a minimum of 20 pilot schools across the country by mid-May. So mid-May as our deadline for finding all of those pilot schools, and we need to make this viable to have 20 pilot schools across the country. So what we're doing is asking people to identify if they would like to pilot with us, and then once we reach that midpoint in mid-May, we will then contact, if provided we've got 20 pilot schools, we will then contact those pilot schools either way to explain what the situation is. So if you would like to find out more, you can email me. If you need to talk to me at all, you can speak to me on the phone, or you can just drop me an email, or you can ask any questions now. If you wish, you can type those in. I will send you through a copy of the slides, so you've got those. Please do feel free to contact me at any point, at any time. I only work Tuesday through to Friday, so I don't work on a Monday. So please, if you do email me on a Monday, don't be offended if you don't receive a response straight away. I do hope this has been useful for you, and thank you very much for listening. I appreciate that you logged in at the end of the day, which can always be quite a difficult time when you've had a full day. So thank you very much for attending. I hope you found it useful. I will just give it a couple of minutes now in case you want to type any questions into the question box, and I'll try and respond to those. Other than that, I will send you tomorrow a copy of the slides so that if you want to share that with other colleagues, you have got that. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you found it useful. Okay, as there have been no questions come through, I'm assuming that there are no questions at this moment. So thank you very much for attending. I hope you have a really enjoyable evening. Take care, and please do, if any questions arise later after this, either when you speak to other people about it or you think about it further, please do drop me an email or give me a call. Thank you very much for attending. Have a good evening.